In June 1954, a radio voice cut through the night over Guatemala City. It warned that rebel forces were coming. In barracks, soldiers leaned toward receivers. In government offices, ministers watched telephones. On a desk lay a map of Guatemala, rail lines, ports, estates, and borders drawn across the paper. At the center of the crisis was not oil, gold, or a battlefield. It was a fruit company. The United Fruit Company owned land in Guatemala. Some of that land was not being planted. President Jacobo Arbenz wanted unused estates redistributed to landless peasants, with compensation based on declared tax value. To a peasant, the land was a field. To United Fruit, it was reserved territory, future expansion, and corporate control. Think about that. A banana soft enough to bruise in a lunchbox had become connected to radio propaganda, military pressure, and the fall of an elected government. So the question is not, where did bananas come from? The question is, how did a fragile fruit become powerful enough to build corporations that could bend railroads, ports, workers, and politics around it? Before the banana became a global brand, it was local food. In tropical regions, people grew many varieties of bananas and plantains. Some were cooked in pots, some were sold in markets, some were carried from gardens to kitchens by hand. There was no single yellow symbol yet. There was just a useful plant in humid places. Then, in 1870, a ship captain named Lorenzo Dow Baker bought bananas in Jamaica and sold them in Jersey City. It did not look like the beginning of an empire. It looked like a dock, a ship, and bunches unloaded after a sea crossing, while buyers studied a tropical fruit that still felt unusual. But it showed the opening. If bananas could reach northern cities before they spoiled, they could become more than local food. They could become a habit. A buyer did not need to understand Jamaica, shipping schedules, or tropical agriculture. He only needed to see a yellow fruit on a cart and believe it would be there again tomorrow. That expectation was the first quiet victory. The export banana had a problem. The local banana did not. It had to survive distance. A cut banana keeps ripening. It bruises in a wooden crate. It rots in heat. It cannot wait like grain in a sack or sugar in a barrel. On a dock, every green bunch is a countdown. That countdown created the modern banana business. If the fruit could not wait, the company had to control time. Land had to be near rail. Rail had to reach a port. Ships had to leave before the fruit turned yellow. Northern cities needed ripening rooms. Street vendors had to be ready when the cargo arrived. The banana looked simple because the root behind it was invisible. Picture the scene. In Costa Rica, a railroad line pushes through wet forest toward the Caribbean. Men lay wooden ties in mud. Mosquitoes rise from standing water, tools strike earth. Along the railway, banana plants first feed workers, then begin filling freight cars. By 1873, miner C. Keith was experimenting with banana planting around his railroad work. By 1890, the rail line to the Caribbean coast had become the physical route bananas needed. Miner C. Keith saw the route differently. A railroad was not just a public improvement, it was a funnel. It pulled fruit from plantation land to the coast, from the coast to the ship, and from the ship to the American street. Control the railroad, and you control the path, control the land beside it, and you control the crop. Control the port and the ship schedule, and you control the price. That was the first transformation. The banana stopped being only a plant. It became logistics. In 1899, Keith's banana interests merged with Boston Fruit to form the United Fruit Company. The new corporation did not simply buy fruit. It assembled land titles, plantations, labor camps, rail lines, wharves, steamships, warehouses, ripening rooms, sales offices, and advertising. Each link solved one physical problem. The field solved supply, the rail line solved distance, the ship solved ocean time, the ripening room solved color, the vendor solved the last few steps into the buyer's hand. To an American customer, the banana was bright, sweet, exotic, and cheap. That cheapness needed a face. Importers and sellers taught Americans how to read the fruit. Yellow meant ready, green meant wait, brown meant too late. A tropical crop became a household object because the company did not only move bananas, it trained the buyer to expect them. To United Fruit, it was a moving chain that had to stay unbroken. Once that chain worked, the company scaled it. Across Central America and the Caribbean, Governments wanted railways, ports, loans, and foreign investment. United Fruit could offer infrastructure. In return, it often received land concessions, tax advantages, and long leases. On paper, the contracts promised progress. On the ground, they could create a private geography. A railway built for bananas connected plantation rows to export docks. A port built for fruit served the company's schedule. A company town gave workers housing, stores, medical care, and schools, but the same employer controlled wages, rent, store credit, transport, and authority. This is why United Fruit became known as the Octopus. The nickname made the company visible. One arm on land, one on railroads, one on ships, one on banks, one on newspapers, one on politicians. In 1904, O. Henry's Cabbages and Kings gave the world the phrase "Banana Republic." The phrase came from fiction, but it named something real. Countries where export crops and foreign companies could distort an economy and a government. The banana had created a map inside the map. Outside were villages, small farmers, and national governments. Inside were company tracks, company docks, company stores, payroll offices, and green bunches moving toward the sea. But the lowest cost in the system was not the fruit, it was the labor. Imagine this. A worker stands in a plantation row with a machete. A heavy green bunch drops toward his shoulder, mud sticks to his legs, heat presses down. Somewhere beyond the trees, a train is waiting. Beyond the train, a ship is waiting. Beyond the ship, a city buyer expects a cheap banana. Cheapness was manufactured. It came from large landholdings. It came from low wages. It came from company towns that made leaving difficult. It came from private transport systems that kept small competitors out. And when workers organized, the banana zone could turn violent. In Colombia in 1928, workers in the United Fruit Zone went on strike. They demanded better conditions and recognition. Troops were sent. Workers gathered near the railway. Shots were fired. The exact number of dead remains disputed, but the meaning was clear. Labor demands in a banana zone could be treated as threats to order. The fruit had crossed another line. It was not only cargo now, it was a structure that shaped roads, wages, land, police, courts, and political fear. That structure reached its most famous crisis in Guatemala. By the early 1950s, Guatemala had extreme land inequality. Arbenz land reform targeted unused large estates. United Fruit held large areas of land, including land it was not actively planting. Surveyors marked property. Peasants waited for plots. Company lawyers studied land records. A banana field was no longer only a field. It was a legal document. It was a tax declaration. It was a border between a peasant future and corporate reserve land. Then the Cold War entered the plantation. United Fruit had influence in the United States. Arbenz was framed as a communist danger, even though the conflict also involved land, sovereignty, and corporate property. In Washington, a land reform became a security problem. In 1954, a CIA-backed operation helped force Arbenz from power. Carlos Castillo Armas led a rebel force. Radio broadcasts exaggerated the threat. Diplomatic pressure tightened. The Guatemalan military turned away from the president. Arbenz resigned. Picture the scene. In one room, a Guatemalan peasant waits beside surveyed land. In another, a company lawyer turns pages in a property file. In Washington, officials look at a map where rail lines and estates sit under Cold War light. That is the darkest lesson of the banana. The fruit built corporations because it demanded control. Control of land, route, labor, timing, and the political conditions that protected the root. But then the system met an enemy it could not lobby: disease. For decades, the export banana was the Gros Michel. It had a thick peel, it traveled well, it looked consistent in crates and on counters. For a company built on standard fruit, it was ideal. But sameness has a cost. Commercial bananas were often grown as clones. One plant looked like the next. One crate matched another. That helped shipping, branding, and ripening. It also meant a disease could move through the crop with terrifying efficiency. Panama disease, a soil-borne fungus, attacked the roots. Leaves wilted, plants failed. Fields that once looked like profit turned into infected ground. A company could abandon a plantation and cut a new road, but the fungus stayed in the soil. The corporation could move faster than governments. It could not move faster than biology forever. By the 1960s, the industry had shifted toward the Cavendish, a banana resistant to the earlier strain of Panama disease, and good enough for global trade. To shoppers, the shelf stayed full. The sticker changed, the shape remained familiar, and the price stayed low, but the logic repeated. One standard banana replaced another standard banana. One monoculture replaced another monoculture. The market still demanded the same size, the same color, the same curve, every week of the year. Think about that. The banana survived one disaster by rebuilding the kind of uniform system that made disaster so dangerous. In 1970, United Fruit merged into United Brands. In 1984, the Chiquita name became the corporate future standard. Fruit became part of Dole. The old world of company rail empires changed, but the pressure remained. Supermarkets still wanted cheap bananas. Shoppers still expected them every day. Export countries still depended on buyers, standards, ships, and prices set far away. Workers still carried the weight of a fruit whose low price had to be produced somewhere. The modern banana hides its history because the rote has become efficient. No coup is printed on the sticker. No land concession appears on the peel. No company town sits in the fruit bowl. No strike-infected soil, railway contract, or radio broadcast is visible beside the bunch. But the evidence is still there. It is in railways built first for exports. It is in ports shaped around foreign cargo. It is in the phrase "banana republic." It is in Guatemala's broken democratic experiment. It is in the biological fragility of cloned fruit. It is in the fact that a perishable tropical crop can appear thousands of miles away, identical and cheap. The miracle is not that the banana travels. The miracle is that the rote has been made to disappear. Today, a banana sits in lunchboxes, hotel breakfasts, school cafeterias, and supermarket displays. It looks harmless because it is familiar, but ordinary does not mean innocent. The most powerful commodities often disappear into habit. We stop seeing the field, the dock, the ship, the ledger, the worker, the fungus, the land title, and the government file. We see only the object in our hand. So the next time you pick up a banana, see the whole route. See the railroad through the jungle. See the green bunch loaded before it ripens. See the company town store ledger. See the worker under the weight. See the lawyer with the land deed. See the president facing pressure over unused soil. See the fungus moving silently through the roots. The banana was never just a banana. It was land. It was speed. It was labor. It was logistics. It was corporate power wrapped in a yellow skin. Thank you for watching until the end. If you want more stories about the objects, systems, and hidden forces that built the modern world, subscribe to the channel. The next story is already waiting. See you in the next video.